Welcome for the Global Dataverse Community Consortium session, number 2. We're going to do a presentation that John will get started, and then we'll have also a couple of breakout sessions. So let me start sharing the screen. I'm Marcia Crozes, by the way, with Harvard University, and John Crafty with Odom Institute at UNC. And we'll have Jim Myers also with us as one of the presenters. Just one moment. Okay.
There we go.
So, yeah, just first, just going over the outline. So we'll be 30 minutes first of presentation, and there will be some time for questions. A lot of focus on the DataCite services that the GDCC provides. Then a governance discussion with short breakout rooms. Then Jim will present the current collaborative efforts that are led or done in part by GDCC, and then we're going to have a really open discussion, which, as I mentioned, it was very productive. Yes, in yesterday's meeting, in terms of getting input from you about potential new services and ideas for GDCC. Okay, so John.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to have everyone. As Marcia mentioned, this is our second meeting. We had a very good one last night with lots of people and got lots of good feedback. So I'm going to try to this first section, which is kind of the business stuff. I'm going to try to do that as fast as possible. I do want to leave some time for questions for this business part, but I also want to be able to get to the real important parts of the discussion in the breakout room so we can get as much information from our community, because this is a community that we want to build the community to work together. We've been going on a little over a year now, but we're just getting started. We want to do the things and provide the services that our community needs. Currently we have 22 members and they represent 11 countries, which is pretty amazing. So we have 22 members, 11 countries. Of course there are membership fees along with those, so that's part of our income. We also have a couple other income lines this year that are new. We applied for an RDA deployment budget that implements some of the RDA recommendations. And thanks to a lot of hard work from Jim, we've been working on that. And that budget was about $35,000. Thank you to RDA for that. And we still have some of that left. We've been working hard on that all year, trying to make that a reality. And Jim will talk later in our community collaboration efforts about some of that work and what we're doing and how we're coordinating that work. We also have coordinated with Harvard to help fund some community collaborations. What we saw in our community is that there were lots and lots of efforts scattered all around the world, and we really needed to coordinate all of these different development efforts. It's been absolutely fabulous. We've seen programming support, we've seen technical support, we've seen language support coming from all over the world, and with the help of Jim at helping us with the GDC coordinating all of that work. And that's one of the things that GDCC does very well, is to coordinate all the different activities and kind of build this open source community and keep this community going. Harvard has been fabulous through the years of including the community, working with the community. So it's kind of time for the community to give back a little bit. So that's what GDCC is about, is providing services for our community and advancing Dataverse. So I'll go on and we'll start talking about some current budget numbers on the next slide so we can get down to the business part. So this year we had about $41,000 in income. And as you notice, we had about $51,000 in expenses. So we're currently in a little bit of a deficit. This is not exact because of the way the fiscal years run. We run the fiscal year different than an annual year, and some of our bills are on an annual year basis, not a fiscal year basis. So we're going to work with the community to try to solve some of these problems. The bigger issue here is there's two issues that created this deficit this year. One is we're still looking for some accounts receivables. We have about a little over $4,000 in unpaid membership or fees so far. I have sent some notes out recently. I had some good communication with our community members. Some of this, unfortunately, is due to COVID crisis. There's lots of challenges in many budgets all around the world. I particularly, and us as GDC community, are very sensitive about this because we want to help our community, and these are times of need. So I am working very hard to coordinate and figure out ways to solve these problems, and reaching out, and first and foremost, being very sympathetic with the community, because this is a really tough time for all of us. I am certain that we'll make it through this. We won't have a problem, but I am concerned about it. The other piece that we have is we had some changes in the DataCite fees. They actually were enacted last year, but they were impacted the 2020 budget for us. And we did not, last year at our meeting, did not change our fees. So our fees didn't reflect the changes at DataCite. So we ended up with a little bit of a deficit there. And we'll talk a little more in detail about that down the road. And we also had this issue with some increase in bank fees. Transfers, we've been charging the exact same amount for checks as we did for wire transfers and for credit card. And our credit card fees and wire transfers are starting to add up now. So we need to account for that. On the next slide, we'll talk about any proposed changes. So the first thing I think we need to do is propose to change our membership from January to January. Membership fees would be the same. We don't want to change that. But we need to run the year from January to January, because many countries and many groups have a hard time paying on this odd cycle, and it's a little easier to pay at the beginning of each fiscal year, which is their annual year. It will cause us a little bit of an issue because we got several months here that we're going to have to, between now and January, because normally we send our bills out in June. But I think we can make that work. The other changes for those wire transfers and credit card fees, we're going to need to increase a small percentage to cover those fees. So everyone pays the same. Right now, what's happening is everyone pays the $500 or the $900, but people who pay with wire transfer or credit card, that there's a fee tacked onto that, and GDCC has been footing the bill on that so far, and that's creating some of our deficits. So the next larger piece is on the next slide is the DataCite changes. So last year, DataCite made some changes to the fee schedule for the 2020 year, and that coordination happened after our meeting, and we didn't change our fees. We didn't move fast enough to get those fees changed to get up with that. It's been fabulous working with DataCite. DataCite realized this challenge, and actually, with some help of DataCite, these fees are not as high as they were intended for this year. They were very, very generous and helped us out, so we don't have as big a deficit. But using the fee schedule from DataCite for 2020, our fees were $15,540, and using the standard payment that we had for our consortium members, depending on your level of DOIs, they created an underpayment. And the reason is because this 2020 fee schedule included repository fees and a different way of calculating the DOI fees. They weren't quite as consolidated, so there was a little more granular. So if you're an organization that was less than 10,000 DOIs, we ended up with an underpayment of around $400 a group. For the people in the middle, like UNC, for example, we had an underpayment of $830, and Harvard had an underpayment of $1,040. So that created the $3,870 that we have an underpayment and caused some of the deficit. So we're still working on that and trying to figure out the best way to solve that problem. It's a little harder to go back to people's budgets and say, hey, I billed you this, but I need to bill you some more. I'm working with UNC. I'm going to try to get UNC to cover errors for sure. But it is a challenge, and we need to work through this challenge. It did create somewhat of an underpayment, but I think we'll be okay going forward. Thanks to the help of DataCite, they have looked into this. They saw this challenge, and in April, they enacted a new set of budgets for the 2021 year and allowed us plenty of time to talk about it, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So I think the next slide or two will talk a little bit about some of that. So DataCite 2021 fees were approved in April. They still have the same €2,000 per member fee, but they changed it from repository to organizations, which is a little better because we can manage the repositories under the organizations, and the DOI fee is set on that. So that helps us a whole lot. There's a couple things. One that impacts us significantly on the budget. If we have large consortium members that have over 10,000 DOIs, then we have to also pay I call it a €2,000 penalty, but basically it would, if you were a member, you'd have to pay that. So if we get very, very large consortium members, we need to treat them as regular members, and we'll be billed for that as well. We still have some advantages even with that because they've enacted this consortial fee cap, which is really the lifesaver for us because it's very, very hard to predict the number of DOIs that you will be using. It changes as people migrate new things, especially with file level DOIs. So it's very hard to predict that, and it's hard to predict expenses, and it's very hard for us to change what we charge very fast. So these caps really help us. And if we look at the DataCite fee schedules a little bit, it'll show us that how they've done some of these fee caps and how they manage to help us out there. I think it's on the next slide. Yeah, so here's the breakdown. They have tier levels, and they're much more granular than they were. And the lowest tier is really very beneficial because it allows people to get started. And we have lots of people just getting started. They may not have, but sometimes 100 DOIs or a few hundred DOIs. So we don't want to bill them at a rate that's extremely high. We actually have people in many of these tiers. So that helps us spread the charges. And on the next slide, that we talk a little bit about the consortial models. The consortial model is what we run under, and it really makes sense for us. The reason we do a consortial model and the reason it's beneficial for members to go through GDCC is that we can help coordinate this. So I have the ability to create test accounts. I have ability to work with the different members to help get them into the DataCite system, to get DOIs, to test it, to migrate it. That's what we're here for. And this is beneficial for DataCite and beneficial for us because we can help them on that first tier of service, and we can help lower some of their service costs because we all know that that personnel cost is one of the largest costs we all face. So we can coordinate all of that. So I can be a little more nimble and help out with some of that as well. The big thing as far as the fees go that really helped us are these consortial fee caps. So the challenge here is what happens if we have a member that all of a sudden migrates 10,000 DOIs? Well, that immediately adds €2,000 to the bill. If we didn't know that, we couldn't bill them in the previous year. So it's very hard to manage that. In this case, these consortial fee caps allow us to know the maximum amount that will be charged. So I did some calculations. I think on the next slide, I used some projected models and tried to figure out if we had 10 organizations and we had 3 exceeding the DOI limits, we would pay a maximum of €16,000 total. So in the next slide, you'll see how I did that. So I had to do some estimates because we don't know the 2020 DOI fee. So 2021 will be based on 2020 DOI usage, but I don't have that number yet. So we used the 2019 DOI usages and just estimated what we thought we would have. And if you look at the numbers here, we clearly hit the caps, and these numbers are way more than the 16,000 if you added all these up. So we're definitely going to hit the caps. We will definitely save money due to the caps. And we really appreciate DataCite working with us on that, because it's very hard to estimate DOI usages, especially with a young organization as ours that we're growing as we add new members. Some members add slowly, some members add very fast. So this helped us a lot. So we need to propose some changes to be sure we don't have any underpayments for next year. And I think on the next slide, I should have some estimates on that. So what we're proposing is that organizations with less than 2,000 DOIs per year pay 800 euros. That's similar to what we're paying now. That's within a few dollars of what the average organization is paying now. So that's not a big change. If you have over 2,000 or less than 10,000 DOIs, the fee will be 1,200 euros. And if you're a single organization, this is an increase. But in many cases, these organizations that pay that 1,200 euro will also have multiple repositories. And if they're different organizations, different repositories are run by different groups within the organization, you can split that bill apart. So then that won't be much more expensive either. And the same goes with the organizations with over 10,000. Of course, there are edge cases. The Harvard Dataverse will probably always have in and of itself more than 10,000 DOIs a year. So that full bill will be because of that. They don't have lots and lots. Now, Harvard does have several small different repositories within their organization, but we're going to leave it up to the organizations on how to divide that money, whether the large one covers the whole bill and covers for the smaller ones. That we're going to bill by organization and let the organizations handle that. So I think this will work. This will solve our problems. It does change the fee structure some, especially for those creating many DOIs. But for the smaller groups, it is actually better because it fixes you into, if you stay less than 2,000 DOIs, it fixes that cost. So these are the suggested changes that we propose that will help solve our DataCite problems. We have one other issue with the DataCite. They changed from their current model to a model that has organizations, repositories, and then the DOIs for those repositories. So what I had to do is create a new structure for all of the organizations. Rather than have it very flat, now it's a tiered model. I've actually created this whole structure within the test, DOI test, DOI Fabrica test situation, but we need to migrate to the production one. What that means is we got to migrate all the DOIs again. Just like we did, for example, when we migrated from EasyID, they'll have to migrate from one account to the other. Most of them will be very fast. We can schedule it and that'll be very fast. It might take a little extra time, an overnight kind of thing for Harvard. So we have to coordinate that, and the ones here at UNC might take a little longer as well. But the passwords will need to be set. We have to coordinate to be sure we have the right accounts. We don't want to break the automatic DOI API publication feature. So I've been hesitant to just turn this on, even though some of them are very fast. We need to coordinate with each member and each organization to be sure their Dataverse is able to not have any downtime in creating DOIs, and especially the one's going to take some time, the one at Harvard. So that's basically all of our business type stuff. And I wanted to, we probably want to have some discussion just to make sure we don't have any questions or comments on some of these numbers.
Yeah. Any questions from the audience? No? We did yesterday to get a sense of, for the audience who, if you could either add it in the chat or just mention it, just unmute yourself and mention it. If you're already a member of GDCC, or you're a potential member, or you're just listening for information. Could you share the information with us? Yeah. Can you unmute yourself? Or Katie, maybe you can do that.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I just don't understand why DataCite is included a fee. Why it's not good to have less than $10,000? Because here in Brazil, like we did in my organization, we are just creating this ecosystem. So
Mhm.
it's, for us, we are in the infrastructure level. We are
Mhm.
installing, and we want the data side for publication. So for us, it's pretty tough to have like $10,000 to be used.
Mhm.
So what is the problem? Why did SI is putting this here?
So when it goes over 10,000, that means that there's a lot more action on their servers, and that's what's really costing them is the more activity, the more bandwidth. They run virtual servers as well. So the more in and outs, and the more it increases their cost there. So obviously DOIs, the more DOIs you create, the more cost is on that end, and we want them sustainable too. Because if they're not sustainable, we don't have anyone to publish against. So we want to be sure to balance those needs. And we have lots and lots and lots. Actually, we have way more people who have small amounts of DOIs than we have to have large amounts of DOIs. In many cases, the only time they get more than 10,000 DOIs is when they have multiple repositories. So unless you're a very big repository, mostly you'll end up with several small ones in our case. And in that case, if it's several small ones, they'll fall under the less than 2,000 DOIs.
Can I just quickly respond as well? So, hi, I'm Helena. I'm DataCite's Director of Community Engagement. So to avoid any misunderstanding, it's not the case that you need to have 10,000 DOIs or more. We're there for any size of organization. I mean, some of our members during their first year only registered 10 DOIs, and others register 100, and others registered 10,000. So if your organization is just starting and the numbers are still low, that's absolutely fine. You can definitely still join and start registering DOIs.
Yep. And that's why we have that less than 2,000 with the smaller amount. And that really helps those smaller organizations, because if they had to join directly with DataCite, they pay the full 2,000 membership fee plus the organization fee and the DOI fee. So it's much cheaper for the small organizations to go through a consortial model.
Yeah, but I know that other organizations in Brazil are going directly to DataCite. Mm-hmm. So DataCite will also do this proposal, this model, because they will be in this less than $2,000, I think, because we're just starting up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are some. I know, for example, a group in Embrapa had a challenge with joining GDCC because of the legal purposes, and they joined straight to DataCite, and that's fine. Their DataCite's happy with that as well. It does cost them a little bit more, especially if they have small amounts of DOIs. But you know, if it's better for organizations to join DataCite directly, we'll work with them as well, and we coordinate with DataCite to do that. So we look at what's best for the organization. The bottom line here is we're trying to help people get access to DOIs. If it's easier to go through us, great. If it's not, that's great too. We want to provide data sharing. That's the goal of GDCC. If we can help with our model, that's great, and we'll do the best we can to keep the price as low as we can. But if it's better to go to DataCite for whatever reason, we encourage that too, because you know, we want to do the right thing to keep everything sustainable, and we want to push forward the data sharing and DOIs, whatever it takes.
Okay, got it.
And I think, sorry, John, I'll also add, I know, Elena, hopefully you don't mind the DataCite folks jumping in here.
No, don't mind at all.
Matt from DataCite. You know, the benefit of GDCC is that you get additional value in working coordinated as a group, and the meetings like this are fantastic, and these are benefits of coming together as a group. So I would sort of emphasize that point. Obviously, the fees and all of that are completely transparent, which is great. The other thing is that working as a group, you have these consortium fee caps, and so there's economies of scale. Our entire model is built on a cost recovery basis. Our financials are completely open, and as John rightly said, we just want to be sustainable, cover our costs, and continue to serve the community. And so, yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, and I agree. And John already mentioned, but we appreciate also that you worked with us and in general with other members of DataCite to also get our input and just based on your proposal and accommodate what was possible, but also understanding that there are limitations. Mm-hmm. Carolina, I hope, did that help you understand more the situation?
Yes, and I think the proposal model will make a lot of sense for us here in Brazil, because we are just like I said, starting up. And I understood about the data size, because we also do this. We provide the infrastructure to respond for some needs, and it's underneath you have the cost of it. So it's making absolute sense for me. So thanks you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. Great. And we see from the group that we have I think it's an interesting mix. Some people were members were interested in learning more to see if they become members. Some that are members of GDCC, some that get DOIs through another consortium. So that's good. And if you have more questions about this part of today's session. Okay.
So one thing.
Yeah, we're going to talk. We have a question about talking about other things not related to DataCite. Yeah, the rest of the session is not about. It's about the other services and other collaborations and projects we're working on. We wanted to be as transparent as possible about the DataCite. I mean, it was one of the reasons we got started with GDCC to coordinate DOI registrations, but obviously we want to provide and we want to get your input about providing many other services to the Dataverse community.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that. So DataCite was one of our first services, but we have many other things going on, and Jim will talk more about some of the work that Jim's been doing to help the community and move forward. And we're at the last of this, we'll be talking about more services and suggested services that people need. So while DataCite has been one of our focuses in the first year or two, it's only one of the many services we hope to offer.
So I'll share the screen again to talk about the other next steps. So one of the things that we want to do that we don't have yet is an external advisory board. We've had in the past with Dataverse internal advisory boards, but I mean internal in the sense of the members were participating already in the Dataverse community, and they were either had an installation of Dataverse or they work directly with Dataverse. But now we want to see if it would be useful to have an advisory board that would just bring ideas, well, from other members from other organizations, perhaps other repositories, other organizations, perhaps like Research Data Alliance or so, that could bring us new ideas about, well, ways of providing advice on some services we could provide. I mean, as we said, we want to get your input from the Dataverse community, but we also want to hear from outside that are there models for sustainability that we should consider, and any other guidance that from other consortiums that we could get that could be benefit to us. So we want to do a short breakout rooms to have this discussion, and the questions so we'll divide this group into smaller groups, and the discussion within your group should be around that specifically what organizations or stakeholders you think should be represented in this external advisory board for GDCC. and any what kind of well, what should be the role, right? How it should be organized, and what role should be in terms of advising our community. What kind of things we want to ask to them to benefit us. So okay, we're gonna start this, and Katie will. So while you're in these breakout rooms, please use the public Google Doc to take notes, and you can add. I think there is already space for every breakout room number. So just under your breakout room number, take a few bullet points of notes from the group, and that will be just. Let me see that we keep on time. Yeah, 10 minutes of discussion. Okay, any questions? Okay, so you magically will be assigned to a breakout room in less than a minute.
All right, you guys should be ready to head to your rooms.
Thank you, everybody, for the breakouts. We got John and I will process information in the Google Docs that we got. A lot of, I see lots of notes and good feedback. So we'll move on to the next section because we want to have time for larger discussion later. So let me share the screen again. Okay, so we'll get Jim Myers to talk about the other projects that GDCC is involved in.
Okay, thanks. So I guess what I wanted to focus on here is, for anyone who was around at the last community meeting last year in 2019, you would have heard that IQSS had a full plate of very intensive development efforts going on. Upgrading to Pyara, which is coming out in version 5, make data count, the UI redesigns for the pages and so on. And we also had community members saying, I've been working on this, I've got this code, I've got this new tool outside, I can do internationalizations. And it was pretty clear that to keep that momentum going, some additional effort would be useful. And so that's kind of where I popped in through GDCC part-time, kind of adding into those efforts. And what I'm going to try and tell you over the next 3 or 4 slides is more about kind of how that gap filling is happening, and sort of de-emphasizing what IQSS is already doing and de-emphasizing a little bit what's going on from the external community that you're going to hear about in all the other sessions during the week. So upfront apologies for that, that I'm trying to get you the GDCC side of some of these things. And like I say, and like what I've said in the breakout sessions here, one of the things that makes this community great is really that IQSS and the community members have all been doing, all the right things and doing things very actively all along. So in some sense, you're just here's a little bit more that's coming through one new hat coming in. And what I'm going to talk about with the bullets here is just the kinds of things I've been focusing on have been both sort of at the design and development level, trying to bring in community development efforts, harden and generalize the ones that are coming in, helping with design and maybe changes inside of Dataverse that make it easier to add things to Dataverse, as well as kind of on the support and community level of we got a lot of new features, a lot of more complex features that have come in the last year. So trying to help people to use those effectively, understand why you want to use them, those sorts of things, and at the outreach and support level. And yeah, and I think I can cover anything else that I missed on here in the next slide. So go ahead. So one of the things we started off early in January this year was sort of extending and expanding the GDCC GitHub presence. There were a couple of repositories out there, but we had last year folks working on language packs, internationalizing. I forget how many languages we have now, but it's like 10 languages or something. They're out there in the repository, as well as a tool called Weblate, which is a way to kind of make translations and make it easier to automate when new terms come out in the Dataverse UI, being able to translate those effectively. So we now have repositories set up for both of those, where community contributions can come in, community members are managing those, but it's sort of neutral ground for where to put those things in. And we're doing the same thing with, there was discussion of getting more UI level tests of the interface. So there's a repository for testing. There's a repository for previewers that started over at QDR, but we're now managing them at GDCC so that other people can contribute more easily. The community can help maintain and expand those over time. The DV Uploader was another tool that came from worked through Texas, but it's now out at GDCC. So again, you know, people can contribute there. We're extending that to start doing more of the direct upload things and so on that you'll hear about during the week. Ones we've talked about have been things like PyDataverse, other ones that again, they're really cool tools that are coming up in the community that rather than staying at their home institution, they really need longer term to have support together. So that's another one that we're hoping when effort is available to be able to move that over. To support that, I've written at least a draft repository guidelines that's linked and shown here, a little bit small, but it's online. And basically trying to talk about, you know, what are these repositories for? How do you get involved? How do you become a committer? What are our policies for things? How are we going to maintain them? Those sorts of things, comments and feedback welcome. And then within those repositories, then there have been things coming in, like if you've been watching the community emails, we've just started there's community efforts that are internationalizing the previewers. We've got our first French and Spanish translations. So all of that work was really coming from the outside. But there were sort of one or last two things that to hook it up to Dataverse and the locale codes, I added a little bit in and basically helped to get it in. And now I'm managing basically getting those out. And the previewers, again, they're unique slightly in that they're not only is the source code out there, but we're actually hosting the HTML and JavaScript live for people out of github.io. So when we change things and put stuff out there, it goes live to everybody who's using them. And so we've been announcing that the next Tuesday is when we're going to make that flip. I think that will all go fine, but everybody who's been using them basically has had a heads up, and that's kind of what we're adding from the GDCC side. If you're watching any of the DevOps stuff, you'll know Don Sizemore has been working on Ansible scripts. We've got community contributions coming in now to add different operating systems for those. And again, Don from the GDC side is just basically making sure those get tied in and helping to accept those contributions in and test them out. There are lots of other issues and PRs coming in. And again, what we're trying to do is not do that work because it's being done by the community members. We're trying to make their job easier, or when there's a question of how should I tie this into Dataverse, or should it be slightly more general? Is there a little bit extra work that would make this easier to do next time? We're trying to add in there. So go ahead, next slide. There are a few more things that I've been a little bit more directly involved in. Having helped start the previewers, I've now created a how to create a previewer document that's out on the wiki at GitHub. Community members have talked about, trying to get 3D previewers for other data types. We've already had spreadsheet previewers come in from the community. So now there's a little bit more guidance as to how you can do this easily, and trying to, again, just help people to do that. John mentioned the RDA grant that we were able to get. Some of that started out through, sorry, I'm switching my topics here. Rather than that, I've got that on another slide. This is the direct uploads. Go ahead, I'll stay with the slide order. So with remote data
Sorry,
storage,
Jim, is that the slide you want? Or the
yeah,
next one?
no. You were going to help me in my messing up. So, but I'll do what I had listed here. So the remote data storage started with Texas looking for ways to upload larger data, but that's a broad interest across the community. So, you know, after Texas started that work, we basically have been adding error handling, and we noticed that, you know, Texas doesn't use Amazon S3, but for those who do, the way Amazon works, we were still limited to 5 GB uploads. So we've been under GDCC kind of getting rid of that that limitation to help other groups in the community beyond the people who contributed the original capability. You'll hear during the week about Scholars Portal doing Globus integration. And again, what we've been doing is not, from the GDCC side, is not doing that work, which is being done by Scholars Portal, but we're looking at how does that relate to the other remote stores? Are there types, are there ways we could change Dataverse to make all of these things work with less effort on the part of community members to get things in? And that in particular, you'll hear more about in the remote store session later in the week. There are other external tools. Australia is looking at how to do, for data requests, being able to put a approval process behind that rather than it just being an automated thing. And you know, they've been doing it for themselves and trying to figure out what's the best way to tie that into the existing APIs of Dataverse is essentially where we're having discussion and feedback to try and help them get through that last hoop and get that merged into the main branch. Same thing with the data curation tool from Scholars Portal that you'll hear about during the week. Just trying to look at ways to get that into Dataverse, make some of the changes that they were making underneath the hood to the APIs, things that would be generic so that other tools could use the same stuff, including, for example, being able to internationalize the title of the tool. Now other tools can do the same thing. And then again, I'll use this one as an example. A lot of these things, you'll see the last bullet on here is then once we've done some of this stuff, there's a draft document coming together that's sort of looking at how can we change Dataverse so that this can be simpler the next time, and so that more powerful tools can be made, and so that we can make, in this one in particular, we're looking at when you make a tool that could potentially be used with Dataverse and other platforms, how can we make it so that you're less tied to the specifics of Dataverse, so sort of make it easier to maintain that tool, make it easier potentially to get tools that have been developed for other platforms to work with Dataverse, et cetera. Okay, next slide. Coming down towards the end here on the big fast speech here. We have the flexible metadata session this week. Part of the things that tie into that is John mentioned the RDA grant that I mentioned before. That started at QDR, and basically what we started there was getting this OAI ORE and Bagot form export, which got us basically into having an RDF as serialized as JSON LD, but we have RDF exports of all of the metadata coming from Dataverse on the data sets, and the ability to associate metadata terms in the metadata blocks that have been sort of internal strings and labels can now be tied to external RDF vocabularies. So when you export stuff out, you're actually able to see things that are in Dublin Core and schema.org. In the metadata sessions, you'll hear about somebody adding a metadata block for Darwin Core that ties things into that and so on. What's being added now under GDCC in the grant is things to sort of go the other direction. Now that you've got semantic data out or you've got semantic data from another source, can we import that through a new semantic API so that we can accept things that are basically marked up in community languages? And can we take an entire bag, either from a different Dataverse or from external sources that's done in this RDA conformant way and import them into Dataverse? So, you know, one of the challenges is moving data into and across repositories. This would be a standardized way rather than everybody having to script everything. If you can get into an RDA conformant bag, you'd be able to pull it in. And again, there's a metadata draft document that's trying to look at all of the things, both this sort of thing as well as all of the things that you'll hear about in the flexible metadata sessions, and asking the question, you know, can all of these interoperate at the same time, and how do we change the way that Dataverse is doing things internally to make this work better? All right, next slide, and I think the last slide here. And again, in the sense of, you know, just adding to things, with the Make Data Count, IQSS had put together the basics of how this all works. I started working with Texas last year to set up some cron scripts to run the things that you have to run on a periodic basis to basically run the processing that figures out to make data counts and gets them back to Dataverse, that sends them to DataCite, that gets your citations back from DataCite and Crossref back into the display. We started realizing that we could set up logging for make data counts before you were ready to set up all the other pieces that are needed, but you needed to basically not be able to turn the display on. So you could use the logging, the display as it was, but start tracking the make data counts early so that you could collect a few months of make data counts before you switched over if you wanted to. So basically been adding in little things around the edges on that. And again, in the last couple of weeks, we found out that if you're using a load balancer in front, that's messing with the geolocation for make data counts. And so we helped put together a fix for that is helping QDR and Harvard and anyone else who's looking at load balancers in front of their stuff. The last is just sort of more general. Again, you've probably seen me trying to answer emails and popping up in issues. We've started putting a GDCC updates in the biweekly calls, so that just trying to keep people up to date with what's coming, and if we've discovered any problems or if there are workarounds, along with all the things coming from Harvard and IQSS for their updates. I was able to get out to the EU Dataverse meeting in Tromsø, which was a great meeting. And again, that's where we just started having discussions about, you know, should PyDataverse come over into GitHub, and those sorts of things. And again, just trying to be out there and you know, add some listening and add some ability to act when people have some energy to do stuff. You know, can we find a way a place for that stuff to happen? Enough coordination to make it go so that it actually turns into something real that we can all use. So again, I've been excited to have a good start here in the last few months, and hopefully that gives you some sense of other things that GDCC is already doing that you know, go beyond just being a coordination body at the governance and DataCite level and so on. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. And before we go to this to the last part of this session, to get your input, do you have questions for Jim? Any questions from anybody in the group here? No?
Mercedes, there was a question about slides. Where will these slides be made available, if they will be?
For Jim? Sorry, can you repeat again? Yeah.
Sorry, there was a question about whether or not the slides will be made available.
Ah, yes. They will be, definitely. Yes. Well, actually, if I talk to Dwayne after that, maybe it's right after today can be made available. We also have a recording.
Also, I'd like to thank Jim for all his hard work. What we found out last year with talking with everyone is that lots of efforts were going on in the community, but we needed that just a little bit of help connecting all the hard work in the community with the internals of Dataverse, and that coordinating and the little bit of programming around the edges, or that external view, that second set of eyes on your code that says, hey, if we change this just a little bit, we'll be able to make it easier next time, or more people will be able to use it. And what we found is that tools get integrated into Dataverse much more quickly when we have this coordinating. So that's a huge benefit for GDCC members, is to be able to come in and talk with Jim and coordinate their external work. Because in many cases, our members are doing programming. We don't want to see forks of the code. We'd rather see it all roll back into the system, but it's very hard to do that if you don't have direct access to the day-to-day operations. So Jim not only listens to our members, but is also inside the Dataverse team and works with them on a weekly basis to know what's going on and where things are moving. So that coordinating effort is fabulous. And so far, it's been amazing what Jim has been able to accomplish in just 6 months.
And I see a question that if it's possible to add links to the notes document. Yes, add any links. Are there any other questions, Katie, from this?
Yeah, there was one more in the chat. A great question. Where can we get access to metadata draft document and repository guidelines?
I'll put the repository guideline link out in the notes. It's actually the presentation. It's a live link there too when that comes out, but I'll go ahead and put that out. The other ones with draft, I think we're stuck a little bit with trying to review to make sure that those are complete enough to kind of share further. That there's no real reason, I think, to hide those. We just haven't wanted to, we're just polishing a little bit. So I think those will have to come out after the meeting, but I'll take this as advice to kind of get them out soon.
Yeah, I think the metadata sessions should help a lot to get the draft ready for everybody to comment. Great. Good. So I think we'll move to this next part, which is really when we want to hear again from you, but really with your input on what services you would be interested for GDCC to provide, and what would any other ideas for GDCC. So the way we're going to do it is similar to before, but a 15-minute breakout room so that we have time to then when we come back, every group will give a summary of what was discussed and the ideas. John, do you want to add anything to that?
I guess the only thing is, what we're looking for are services that our members want. So we want to be very responsive to the members and maybe new members. There may be people here that if you offered this service, it would be very beneficial and I would join. So those are the types of things that we're looking for. This community is your community, it's not ours. So we want to do this as a very joint effort. So anything you can imagine. For example, we've had people say, I'd love to have a service where I could pay someone to help install my Dataverse. I'm too small to be able to understand how to load all this software. Maybe run one virtually for you. Several of our members run virtual Dataverses for other groups. So those types of services are just some ideas, right. But I'm sure there's many, many more.
Yep, exactly. And one of the things that was discussed yesterday also, that we want to hear from the members, but we also realize that we have 60 Dataverse installations, many others that are not yet in production or they are not publicly available, but that are setting up Dataverse for the institutions. But there are 22 members so far. Of course, this consortium is very new, so we haven't, our field resources haven't done any outreach, but all those other installations, what is that would make you would make you be part of this consortium, right? And what would be a benefit for you if we provide a service? Then you would want to be part of that. So and there are ideas also about more contributions to development that are coordinated by the community. So that would be to be able to continue this great already collaboration projects like Jim has mentioned, but doing more of that. So okay, so let's get started with the breakout rooms. I think we're all back. Yes. So we're just gonna do now a very quick round of for each breakout group, just to one of you from the breakout room that could be volunteer to just give a summary of what you discussed. Okay, let's start with group one, room number one.
Okay, I think that's me. So we had a rather interesting or while short discussion. What we wrote down was that it would be great to have some guides about how non-programmers can contribute to the evolution of the product. That is how to put a ticket on GitHub or whatever, or what channel to activate to be able to contribute to the project. And we also noted, I'm sorry, it's one really big concern of mine regarding Dataverse in general, and I already filed a question yesterday, so I'm really sorry if it comes again, but I'm really looking forward to the embargo functionality, which is noted down in the roadmap for next fall. And well, I had some concerns about the fact that this embargo functionality was not considered as a priority right now. Although for me, it's really important for my community to be able to, well, to put an embargo period on a data set before, for example, before an article is published, or before a patent is filed, or before a book is published. When we discuss with our researchers, it's something that comes really, really, really often. And it's really a feature that, in my eyes, is Dataverse is currently lacking. That's all we wrote down.
Thank you, thank you. It's very useful, and we can see to discuss that with John about well, the need of that feature across groups and prioritizing it, and with the IQSS team. So yeah, group 2. Somebody would volunteer?
Yes, I can. I was on mute there. So in group 2, we talked about a couple different things. Developing training materials was also discussed, how we can bring together different types of training materials. One thing that we talked about is different user stories, how people are using Dataverse to make data fair. How can people leverage Dataverse to make that data fair, and collecting all those user stories, and we learn how different groups are customizing Dataverse. So having working groups around different implementations of Dataverse and how they were implemented, because many groups are using it for different purposes, so how that would happen. Another type of user stories are metrics. We're all asked to provide metrics to our administration on how we're doing in our user communities, and with all the new Make Data Counts APIs and other ways that Dataverse is collecting metrics, we can share within our communities how we're using Dataverse and how we're using the metrics. Another idea of training is non-technical training, things like curation, how we deal with the research data. Can we share those topics, because all of us are interested in open data and making data fair and reproducibility. So how are we doing that, and can we share some of the experiences that are non-technical and how we're using Dataverse to curate data, the workflows, especially those like, for example, Australia is doing some pre-ingest workflows, and I know we're working some on ODM. And maybe pick a topic for the bi-weekly calls that we can have, maybe even add an extra study session where people can come in and talk about a certain topic, and they can drop in, and whether it be technical or non-technical, maybe we can have some coordinated effort to have some sort of topic-based, rather than a scattershot of all the different things going on, but maybe a topic-based call or workshop. I think that was about it. Jim or anyone else, let me know if I missed something.
Okay, since we're running out of time, we'll keep it very, very short. So if we, I don't know, Valentina or from Group 3 could just give less than a minute summary of what we discussed in Group 3. Somebody volunteering?
Sorry, I don't remember the number of my group.
I think.
Oh, okay.
I think
Okay.
I can just well, briefly summarize. Well, we talked about sharing of use cases and among the members. So to make like a list or a catalog of the different uses of Dataverse in the member institutions. We talk about availability of training materials for data stewards to support the end users. And we also talked about integration of Dataverse into the future European Open Science Cloud. So that was just a brief summary. So if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, and we have a good note there too. That's perfect, yes. So group number 4, and then we'll wrap up because we have a lot of sessions today, a lot of to move on to. So Jonas or Don, is that Jonas? Great.
I think for me, the main point was a way to implement features on request. So it would be great if we could have, I mean, we could spend money on it. We could say, hey, we need this feature. We are able to spend this and that much on it. We are able to provide these resources on our own, let's say our collaboration from 2 people at our institute that might not be like real programmers, but have insight into how we use Dataverse, what the environment is like and everything like that. So if that could be a close collaboration, and if then we could definitely find the way to finance it, and maybe that could again cross-finance the expenses of other things in the GDCC.
Great. I think that's a great idea. John, if you want to say the last words, just close this session. Thanks to everybody for all your input. You're muted.
Sorry about that. I do want to, I know we're running out of time, but I do want to thank everyone for all the hard work over the year. This is a community effort, and as you can see, the work that Jim is coordinating would not happen if we didn't have all the work of the community and all the great things that happen in Dataverse. So we're very excited about possibilities and the growth, and we're seeing really good things with Dataverse and the Dataverse community. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you. Bye. See you in another session soon.
Yep.
Bye.
See you soon.
Rest of the day. Bye.